Okay, whoever voted for high neck sweater, the unsubscribe button is right there, so you can just get right the hell off my channel right now, because it's not going to get any better for you. Hey guys, this is Margaret, and a few people sent me this wonderful article that I was personally triggered by. It's from the Daily Telegraph, an Australian newspaper, and it is entitled, "Video games with porn-type heroines are harming children, body image experts say." Not the children. Not the children. And the article was tweeted out, attached to this photo of Laura from Street Fighter V. You can probably guess where I'm going to go with this, because I have two really big problems with this article. Two really very big problems with this article. Two huge problems. So as we take a look at this article, it starts out wonderfully enough. Now, I should probably say this before I get started. Generally, the people who write articles aren't the ones who came up with the headline. The headline writer is different from the person writing the article. So even though the article is written by somebody called Clarissa Bai, she is not necessarily the one who came up with the title for this. It would have been an editor who came up with the title. So I can't put all of this on Clarissa, but I can still put quite a bit of this on her. So this one's for you, sweetie. So this was posted on June 8th, and it starts off by saying, "Porn-influenced heroines in video game with impossibly big breasts and unreal bodies are harming a generation of Australian children." I don't know what that means. I guess I get to add Australian children to the list of people that I've pissed off lately. Article goes on to say, "This stark warning comes from concerned body image experts who warn the increasingly graphic sexual poses and depictions of women in mainstream video games fuel harmful stereotypes and body dysmorphia." Now, in case you're like the rest of the world and you have no sweet clue what body dysmorphic disorder is, it is an anxiety disorder that causes a person to have a distorted view of how they look and to spend a lot of time worrying about their appearance. So there's a lot here. It's not just one sentence. There's a lot more implications. It's not just X causes Y. There's a few things that they're pushing here. So first, to start, they're saying that, first off, there is something which is graphic sexual posing and depictions of women, which I'm pretty sure is called porn in the real world, and it's actually really popular. So yeah, I will agree with the fact that there is such thing as graphic sexual poses and depictions of women, both in the real world and in the 2D world. Oh wow, porn exists! What a great article, I'm learning so much already. But it's really not like this is new, you know? Second of all, there is such thing as graphic sexual poses, i.e. porn, and it's depicted in video games. And that the graphic sexual poses, I'm just going to keep calling it porn because that's what they mean here, and that these pornographic images of women in video games have an impact on the people who consume or play these games. And the end result is that playing games with pornographic images leads to harmful stereotypes and body dysmorphia. You know, I kind of wanted to talk more about the harmful stereotypes here, but I'm really bothered by the body dysmorphia that they're talking about. I'll get into that a little bit later. So as for the harmful stereotypes, the argument here is that pornography in video games leads to harmful stereotypes and body dysmorphia, and that implies two things. One, that harmful stereotypes didn't exist or were never as strong until after video games started producing busty female characters, and that having a large chest is also intrinsically pornographic and negatively affects the people around you. Yes, the blame video games for real-life problems, boogeyman. We're at it again here. So remember how back in 2014 when we had feminist frequency— oh my god, I can't believe I had to talk about feminist frequency again. Remember how back in 2014 with feminist frequency there was a big issue to do with the way that women were depicted in video games, and yet none of the arguments talking about the way that women are depicted in video games seem to have any awareness of the fact that video games have had different graphics processing capabilities. So the argument was never, you know, women started being depicted in video games poorly after the SNES came out, or poorly after 64-bit consoles became popular, even though we all know 64-bit and 16-bit and 8-bit really doesn't mean that much. So I do dislike it when they say that the way that women are depicted in video games is always evil, because none of them seem to have any awareness of the fact that video games have slowly gotten better over time. They're not willing to say that, you know, it wasn't until, you know, the PS1 came out that we had those nice polygonal graphics that women were poorly depicted in video games, because we could finally accurately depict weird boob shapes. So if these people who want to blame video games for everything wanted to do it correctly, they would at least try to pin down on a year, because I'm pretty sure that it wasn't the illegal cartridges coming out on Atari that was, you know, the lead cause of women being depicted poorly in video games. Now would probably be a good time for me to include some B-roll of Custer's Revenge being played, but I'm pretty sure you can look that up for yourself. So they're blaming video games, but they just can't tell us what the real problem is, which is the graphics capability of video games. So I guess this means that the most sexist people in the video game world are the ones who play on a PC with a glorious 60 FPS. I mean, it's not video games' fault. You can't just look at video games now and say, it's always been like this. You do have to have some mild understanding of the industry, which they do not have. They're really just here to rip on women with large breasts, I think. And you know what? I will say it. I'm very, very sexist in this regard. I think that pretty women are an aesthetic good in society. That's why summer is so fantastic, because all the girls are out walking around with their dresses, you know? That's one of the wonderful things about a nice, free society. You have beautiful girls walking around, you have wonderful aesthetic architecture, and everything is kept clean. All these things are general aesthetic goods, and I don't think that you ever really want to remove them from society. So I don't know why these women, and it's all women who are complaining in this article, as we will continue to see, I don't know why these women are taking it upon themselves to be so insulted at the fact that people generally find women, as curvy as these women are, to be more aesthetic to look at. And I have to say to these women, if video games is really your first introduction to the fact that women with exaggerated feminine features are generally sexualized by society as a stereotype, then, welcome to Earth. Body dysmorphia. Let's be honest, body dysmorphia, it's a first world thing. It's probably not just the video games that are screwing with your head. You should probably go see a therapist if, 2D women are ruining your life to this kind of extent. You probably have a lot more going on in your head than just being pissed off at Lara Croft or that beach volleyball version of Dead or Alive. It's probably a good time to give a quick shout out to Play Asia for all your uncensored weeb needs. So the article continues, as articles usually do. The women's advocate Melinda Tankard-Reist says of all this, even when women are depicted as kicking arse, they have to be hot while doing it. Attention is drawn to her sexual characteristics with tight clothing and emphasizing large, surgically enhanced breasts. Surgically enhanced because I paid for because I can afford to pay for these. My God, it costs as much as a car to try to get these things installed. This bothers me. You're giving me body dysmorphia because you're making me worry about how I look. You're making me feel like I should be ashamed of the way that I look. You know what? Go to hell. How about that? Why don't you join the hundreds of millions of people who think that I should be wearing a burqa every day? And hey, maybe I feel good about seeing myself represented in games. Maybe I want to see midgets with hilarious proportions who also bleach their hair within an inch of its life. And maybe that's why I'm a mercy main, so don't at me. So an Australian psychologist, Sarah McMahon, says, these images set up impossible expectations. I don't know if that's a rag on current jiggle physics or... what's really impossible here is that all these women are wearing strapless bras while exercising. She goes on to say, the women in these video games have impossibly big breasts and they're not athletic. If you've had big boobs, you can't be athletic. Now, I do have trouble exercising, but that's because I have a complicated autoimmune disease. It's not really the boobs. They do make sports bras in my size. Quick shout out to Shock Absorber. They do make fantastic sports bras for unrealistic pornographic whores like myself. But again, real talk here. I really resent this belief that if you're like a tall, beautiful model or if you're an hourglass midget like me, then there's something wrong with you and you should feel ashamed of it. Honestly, I prefer making videos and appearing on live streams a little more covered up, but it's actually kind of hot out today, so this worked out well. I was talking about boobs, right? Okay, boobs. What's really damaging is never seeing women who look anything less than perfect. Yeah, and I know that's what you're going to get in a video game, but you know what? The men always look perfect too. The horses always look perfect. The dogs always look perfect in these games. The animals always look perfect. The towns always look perfect. You walk into somebody's kitchen and it's pretty much clean. There's a lot of perfection in video games just because it's cleaner and easier and more attractive to look at overall. You're going to see more bright blue days and you're going to see dark cloudy skies unless you need that as a part of the gameplay. Things are just going to look nicer. And that sometimes includes large breasts. This body dysmorphia thing, it's really just just another symptom of how, in the modern world, it's just easier to blame everybody for your problems. It's so much easier to be a victim. It's easier to say, oh, well, things are hard for me because of that person over there. Most times that would really just be considered like an offshoot of jealousy, saying I should have exactly what that person has, and because I don't have it, I'm just going to bitch and piss and moan about it my whole life. TLDR, you are not a victim. So let's go on here. At the end of this article, Dr. Liz Connor says, why is the fantasy of female action figures essentially soft porn? It's sexist, and it values their fuckability over everything else about them. Okay, well, maybe you think that women in short shorts and low-cut tops means that our biggest contribution to society is our fuckability. Like, I couldn't imagine having attractive female friends and contributing to an article like this that says that, if you're attractive or if you show off your hot body all the time, you're just some stupid whore who's, giving young girls eating disorders. And maybe that's the attitude that's really causing body dysmorphia. Not in the people who don't have those assets, but in the people who do. What you're doing here is reinforcing the idea that women with exaggerated features only exist because we paid for plastic surgery, and that we only exist this way because we want attention, and that all of our accomplishments will always be overshadowed by our bodies. That's the real issue here. These women are coming out and telling me that no matter what I do, what they're really saying here is what's most important is how I'm presenting myself to society, and that if I do wear a low-cut tank top, I will never be taken seriously. And something about porn, I don't know. I think this is what people mean when they talk about sex-negative feminism. So, thanks, lady. Thank you, third wave feminism.